And welcome, everyone. We thank you for joining us this evening, and we would ask that, at least initially, that you go ahead and mute yourself. It just keeps background noise out, and up on the screen. I hope you all are seeing the screen share. There's thumbs up on you see. Yeah, okay, perfect. Our church's covenant to working together, which just reminds us that we are involved in a set of mutual promises as a church, and that we're trying to listen, speak with care and compassion, that we're listening respectfully, and so we respect difference of thoughts and opinions. We speak for our own experience, don't rely on secondhand information. We trust one another's best intentions, and we understand that our own actions, oops, that went the wrong direction. Why is there we go. Understand that our actions have impact on others. When we have found that we're hurting one another, we try to communicate that discomfort directly, and we resolve conflicts through compromise and collaboration. And if anybody wants a copy of those in another form, just email me and I can get them to you. Tonight's agenda, I'm going to do a prayer and introduction of our team. And then later, when you get to the point where folks are asking questions and for clarification, we would ask that you just say a word the first time you speak to introduce yourselves. We'll have some general guidelines for our presentation, in other words, rules for the road, and then a presentation of the phase 2 governance restructure, and some things about why it is that we need to change, that we're looking for a mission and ministry focused governance, and some charts to help walk you through that, some examples about how this structure might work, and then we'll get to our Q&A. We do ask that you would save questions for the time of Q&A, just so we can get as much information to everybody before you start asking questions that we may actually be answering a little bit later in the presentation. So we do ask that you would hold your questions if you want to write them down. That'd be great. And then we'll get to them at the end of the time. Let us start with a moment of prayer. God, you are with us through all the changing circumstances of our lives. And we know that you lead us from one place to the next. We ask that you would be with us as we do some discernment about what structure is going to be useful to this church so it can live out its mission and ministry in ways that are pleasing to you, in ways that engage all of our good people in serving this community. Bless us all so we may treat each other with love and respect. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
Okay, so as I said, guidelines are please hold your questions to the end. Also, I would say that some of you have already been to one of these presentations, and some of you may have asked a bunch of questions already. And so when we get to the Q&A time, we will ask that those who have not had a chance get the first chance to raise questions, and then we will certainly get to those of you who may have additional questions to ask that you didn't get a chance to, or additional observations or additional feedback for us. I'd like to introduce the team that's been working on this. We have Keith Schnars, who is somewhere on my screen, but I'm not seeing him right now. Anyway, I know he's in the room. Keith is a newer member to the church, but was a part of a governance restructure at a previous church, so brings some wisdom from a different perspective. Patty Berger is on this team. Patty, you may know, was a moderator of this church and has probably been on most committees in this church as well, and is certainly somebody who has a great deal of respect for what bylaws can provide for a church in terms of a orderly way forward. And then Jane Rowland, who has also served in many capacities. And Jane has always impressed me as somebody who, when she sees a problem, comes at it from a perspective of goodwill and figures out a process to move forward. So thank you for the three of you for doing this work. And now I'm going to turn it over to who's talking first?
I think I am.
Okay, go for it.
So we just wanted to first let you know that we have talked to Susie. If you haven't had a chance to read read any documents on this, and Jane and Susie made PowerPoints and there's slides here, but it is our hope to have these documents posted as we move forward. Susie's going to try to get them on the hub, I believe. Is that correct, Susie?
Yeah, I'm actually going to try to get just a link on our website rather than the hub, so it just is easier for people to find it.
Awesome. Okay. So that'll give you a chance to find it. So we did want to tell, there's a couple of things we want to make sure everyone understands. We are not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We definitely we're still going to have bylaws. We're still going to function as a congregational church. Our congregation will make the decisions and there will still be a central board. What we are trying to do is to shift our structure from what is really a goal-oriented administrative type of structure, organizational structure, to what will now be more of a mission ministry driven structure. And the difference there is the how versus the why. And we'll address that as we get into it. But
Patty, could I interrupt for just a second? Could you
yes.
move in front of your computer screen because your voice is kind of going in and out?
Yeah, and you know what?
As you move back and forth.
I'm gonna turn this off.
If you're right in front of your screen, I think your speaker will operate more consistently.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Better. Thank you.
Better? Okay. So I think what we wanted to make sure, first of all, that everybody understood we'll still have bylaws, we'll still, because the questions have come up before, we will still follow Robert's Rule of Order. We're addressing, as you all know, because I see faces that are sitting on committees right now, short-staffed committees, where we are facing two things. Committees not getting filled. We're not even getting close to the 70 positions that are in our bylaws right now. And I think trying to bring in other congregational members and community members to spark new ideas and new thoughts, new ways to do things in the church. So I hope as we go through this, you'll see where we're going with that. We are still are very thankful for all of you and all who take time and love this church. We're just trying to find new ways to invigorate and keep us creative and growing. So that is our goal. I think the other thing I wanted to talk about is that this is phase 2. This is only phase 2 of this process. Our first phase was Central Board and Reverend Susie asking us, putting a mandate before us to try to look at what other churches are doing, what options are out there, as they struggled with the nominating process again last year. So y'all know we talked about it at annual meeting, and we have been, prior to that, working right up till now on the different options we have. So that phase was literally research. I mean, hours of research, brainstorming, hours of YouTubes, other churches. So we tried to look at other churches and how, because we're not an anomaly. We're not going through this alone. In fact, many especially congregational churches, have had to look at the old form of governing and adjusted to now. So so we're at the phase where we have gone through all those documents. We've brainstormed and come up with the org chart that you're going to see as we go move forward. And you've probably seen it. There's a current one with 70 seats, and the one that we've presented to Central Board as an option will have 23. Is that correct, Jane? 23 seats. So it's fewer, but it's much more fluid. And we are so we're at the point where we have presented that to Central Board. They gave us a lot of feedback. And to get there, not did we just research, we talked to a lot of people, we did surveys, we tried to build something from what everybody else had done. You know, you got to use what's out there. There's no point in starting over. So we looked at all the others, a lot of others, and then talked internally. That's how we are where we are now. We're at the phase where we take it to the congregation, get the feedback from them, their thoughts, and continue to mold this process. After we come up with a general idea, okay, let's move forward from this and build, then I I imagine Central Board and Reverend Susie are going to form another team that is going to do the bylaws, and probably a separate team, and maybe they're going to work together, that's going to create a transition. So this is a long process in front of us, but it was time. It was really time we start to look at how we effectively move forward. And so that's how we got to where we are and where we are right now. So I think Keith is up. Is that correct?
Sure.
You sure?
Yeah. Yeah. Next, I guess we'll jump on to like the next slide because we want to say like where are we today?
Yeah.
And as we look at where we are, right? We've historically, meaning if we go back, I'm going to say 60 years or so, right? We were a much larger congregation, right? And we had bylaws that divided things. We had procedures in place for a large group. Keep in mind, and Reverend Susie and I were talking about this earlier, that looking historically at it, prior to the 1940s, we had basically very simple bylaws, very simple administrative governance. And it's interesting because after World War II, we had the baby boomers, big population growth, as well as people with a lot of experience coming out of the military who had all the administrative governance that ran everything. That same, I don't know if I don't want to say mindset, but that experience was applied everywhere. It not only corporations but churches as well. And and it worked really well. However, now we're at a point where the population's changing, the demographics are changing. We've leveled off at school systems. There's not a lot of growth. In fact, younger families coming in are somewhat priced out of the area. So it's going to be a bit of a transition, as you could tell looking around. I, I come into church on Sunday and I realize I'm a newer member. I'm not one of the younger members, but I'm far from being the oldest member either. So, we do need to change to still accomplish the ministry and mission, right? We had ministry and mission before, and we're going to do and have ministry and mission again. So just for a moment, think about what committees you serve on. You don't have to raise your hand yet, but think about what ones you serve on, what things you like to do, because we're going to go back to that in a few minutes when we start talking about structure. So next slide, please. So proposed, and I think if you really look at it, the the prior one said administrative committee driven governance, or maybe I should say committee driven and administrative governance. This one here, it says ministry mission task focused, right? So we're going to look at the task at hand and then say, hey, what's going to work to make that task work well, right? Think of flexibility. For those of you who attend yoga class, flexibility is important, right? So as we look, we're going to have defined teams, and teams is a really the key word, at least here for me. Those teams would work with the formation of small term task groups, or short term, not small term, but it could be a large group, but a short term task group in order to work with other teams, to work together, and to do what? Accomplish the mission and ministry that we have. So really what we're looking at is, hey, what's the task? Who's interested in these tasks? Who can we reach out to because we know they're good at it or have skill in that area, talent, and then say, hey, let's get together and let's see what we can do to solve this particular mission, solve this particular ministry, to reach out and make things happen. Should we jump to the well? Well, no, I'm not going to do questions. We'll do questions later. Sorry, Susie.
No worries.
Jane, do you want to take over on the next slide?
Sure.
Gotta get it.
Is that the slide you want, or am I on the wrong one?
No, we want the current chart.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so on this slide, you can see that right now we have 70 elected positions for our governance. Every year at annual meeting, there's a slate of people to fill all the slots, all the 70 positions on our nominating slate. And so there's Christian Ed with 9, music with 9, fellowship with 9, across the board. And then a representative from each of those committees serves on central board, along with the chair, vice chair, clerk, and treasurer of the church, who are also elected. And of course, we have the minister and the staff. And there is a stewardship committee that's not included in that 70 elected positions. I don't think. No. And then we have nominating committee and scholarship committee, which are short-term committees that report to either central board or the minister. And under the central board, there's also the personnel committee, which helps to serve our staff. And we have a property manager, which is also not included in the 70 positions, who can be a trustee, but does not have to be a trustee, but helps out with managing the property, obviously. So that's what we have currently. And Susie, if I can have the next slide. We have our proposed governance. And again, members of this governance would be elected by the congregation at the annual meeting. There would be 6 bylaw established teams, and those would consist of the executive team, which is the chair of central board, vice chair of central board, treasurer, and clerk of central board. We would also have the ministry and faith formation team, which would include the tasks now served by the Christian Ed, Fellowship, and Women's Association. We'd also put tasks under there for nursery care, for visitation to help the minister out with visiting shut-ins or people in the hospital. And we would hope to, because the Women's Association does not have a lot of members at this time, we would hope to try to create some more energy for the Women's Association and have that a strong ministry still. We'd have the worship team, which would include tasks now held by the deacons, the music committee, and we'd have greeters on that team, tasks on that team. We'd have an admin team, which would include the tasks of communication, which we do not have a committee for at this point, personnel, nominating, which we may change the name to like onboarding or something a little less intimidating than nominating. And we also felt like we needed to have some place on this governance chart where we had a team of people who also looked at membership and audit of the church, not only financial audit, but audit to see if we are actually following our bylaws. We'd have a mission and outreach team to do the outreach fund distribution like now, but also plan mission trips and try to increase our community engagement. And we'd have a resource team, which is basically now what the trustees are, and they would oversee the tasks of budget oversight, property management, investment oversight. And you can see on these charts that the minister serves as ex officio on all these teams. And then we have other members of central board or staff who also serve as ex officio on these teams. And of course, on the governance is also the minister right up there and the staff. So this is what we were looking at to try to still to reduce the number of elected members, but still have a congregation elected leadership and financial responsibility, which were two of the things that when we did our survey and have talked to people, we know are very important for the congregation. So that is the basic structure. If there is,
Can I add something, Jane?
sure.
So I just want to say, when we put this together as a team, we understand that as we move forward, maybe people, and that's why we're coming to you, are going to have feedback that says, no, I think this would fit better in another team. Or I think that, or why did you do worship team? Well, we did worship as a team because in many small churches, that is the only team. They focus on worship and the church. It's funny because Reverend Susie had said, I was the minister of a church like that. It's small, that's what they have. So we tried to look at other churches and our bylaws and make sure that we fit everything in there. It doesn't mean that these are written in stone. We may very well, as we move forward, say, hopefully through collaborations of these teams, there'll be hybrids. That is our hope is as we move on with this, we'll see people from our church and outside that says, hey, but what about this? Because I think I have a gift for this. Our goal is finally that at least our team's goal was that we get as many people in the church involved as we possibly can. We all, and this is hard, but we all have a gift, right? I mean, we all have something that, and maybe we can't give a lot of time, but we all have something to give to this church. So I think part of this is going to allow new people or people that have sat out and not really done a lot, a chance to say, to give them ownership into the church to say, hey, I can do that. I can help with that. So that's kind of why we did break them down this way, but we certainly know that there may be more discussion as to how these finally fall out. Okay, sorry, Jane, I just wanted to throw that out.
Well, can
That's
I,
okay.
it actually, Jane and Patty, I actually have a little something to add too. As we looked at this, especially with all the research that Jane and Patty put into this, I mean, it was, believe me, they spent countless hours. Uh, the one thing that it actually gives is flexibility and mobility. So if somebody is new and says, well, gee, I've got maybe little kids, or I have to travel at a distance, or I'm only here on weekends, this would give them the ability to participate, even though they may have limited time, which was referred to. So even though I have a little bit of time, I could still participate. I could still feel as though I belong, as opposed to I feel like I'm visiting, right? So to belong is really what we're like really looking for, because if you belong, you will indeed help. You will indeed add. Your gifts will make a difference.
And one of the questions that we had when we brought this to central board was, well, we're having trouble doing this with 12 people. How do you expect us to do this with 3 people? And the key to that is there will be 3 elected members to that team, but the very vital parts of those teams are the task groups that will be formed underneath that team umbrella. So the tasks, like Patty and Keith said, they may shift around at any time. Even if we decide on model A, we may be at model A1 or A3 within a year. Who knows? But what will be vital is having people step up to the plate and say, hey, that's something I would like to do. I'm good at I would love to go visit people in the nursing home, or, hey, I'm really good with numbers. Maybe I can sit on the resource team, or you get the drift.
Maybe we go to those slides.
Sure. Oh, these are just, so this is what I was reading from that described the research, the restructure proposal, the number of positions and how they're broken down, and then the preliminary premises of how this structure will work. Again, this has not been wordsmith. This is our notes on how we see things working. This is not the bylaws. These are how we see things working. And again, it's a lot of information right on that little screen. So
that's why we put them out.
We will have these up elsewhere.
Yeah, I can actually drop this whole presentation into the chat so people can download it if you are okay with that.
Sure.
Fine.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So here's an example, and there's somebody watching here who this might sound familiar to, but so the example is during the transition from the current governance structure to a new one, an outreach committee member comments that since he has fulfilled 2 3-year terms, he's terming out. He's sad that he will no longer be able to be closely involved with working with the immigration issues and immigrant families in the area. But he can work with the mission and outreach team on a task group. There's no timing out on a task group. In fact, current and past members of committees and boards with knowledge about these tasks, how we've done things, or ideas how they could be changed based on how they've seen them work for many years, are going to be very vital in the transition to a new governance structure. And another example.
You want me to take this one? Because I kind of relate to it.
Sure.
Right. So, a couple, recently joined at That's me and my wife. We look at it and we're looking at the workings and looking at the structure and like what committees are there, what things to do, right? There's a Women's Association Ministry Task Group. Hey, it's under Ministry and, Faith Foundation. So, my wife says, "Hey, what can I do? Can you tell me about it?" Oh, there's something about a craft fair. Oh, gee, my wife was an art minor in college. Craft fair sounds good, right? So, and then she realizes, oh, her husband likes to tinker around the house and they live in an old house and he likes to work on it and everything else. Hey, is there something he could be working on? So, and then, one day, like, how do we meet more people? And then somebody says, hey, we're short of ushers. Can you usher today? Sure, we could usher. And then, suddenly you're greeting people, you're saying hello, right? We all have, this is one thing we all have. We all have a habit of sitting in and around the same area every Sunday. Right? Yeah, you laugh, right? But it's true. And I'm just as guilty of it as the next person. Fortunately, my wife's not. My wife will say, let's sit over there. And, she's the social butterfly, not me. But I can't think of a better way than to have contact with everybody other than being an usher. You get to see everybody. And that's what they did in the old church that I belonged to down in New Jersey. Was as you walked in, they're like, oh, by the way, do you mind doing this? And we did. Continue on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't be sorry.
What's number 3? Is that,
That's you, Patty.
oh, okay. So the Ministry and Faith Foundation team determined they want to revisit the current Christian ed practices. Given the fewer number of children in the church, they feel if they could find a few creative members that like to brainstorm an idea that might bring community families to the church grounds even for a little while, it would meet our mission and our ministry. So they brainstorm and come up with the idea of an ice cream social. That involves community engagement and so outreach is involved because they go to the mission and outreach team, say, hey, we've got an idea for this Sweet Blessings ice cream social. Yes, we made this all up, so bear with us. And then as the mission and outreach team get involved, because they're in community engagement, the admin is also involved because of communication. Communication steps up and says, we'll get the word out. We'll go before the church, before service, and try to bring in people. We have whatever ideas they brainstorm, they bring to the table. And then the ministry and faith team are also invited to participate. That becomes a whole new brainstorming crew on that task force. And the ice cream social becomes a collaboration, and it's a short-term commitment for all those people. And then once it's done, hopefully it's successful and they determine whether it's going to happen again. So that's just an example of how they can collaborate and also come up with new ideas.
So ironically, I often use an ice cream shop in one of my presentations at work, but and who doesn't like ice cream? Now, earlier I asked, think of a committee you're on, things you like to do. And what we're going to do is let's jump back to the proposed governance structure, the one with the bingo. Now, who wants to raise your hand, take yourself off mute and say, this is the committee I really liked being on, and we're going to locate it on this chart.
Oops, sorry about that.
On that graphic.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I asked a question now. It's relevant to this. I love this idea. I think the potential for more engagement, and it's nimble, and it's something that's been around for a while that I've interacted with in other places. But for me to answer that question that you just asked, and I realize this is an initial presentation, I need the definition behind what's in these on these teams. And Patty, I know you said that, this isn't a final draft at all. Something might be moved around under one heading or another, which isn't important at this point. But it would be hard for me to answer the question you're asking because I'm guessing at what this means, but I'm not sure what it means.
Well, if you've got the committee, then we could help figure where it is on the chart. So that way we're not guessing and we're trying to together work toward where it belongs.
So yeah, I think what Keith is saying is if you're on a committee now,
Oh, excuse me.
we would try to help figure out where you'd belong in this new design.
I thought it was sort of like, where would you like to go?
Well,
Well,
yeah.
That too.
And
Could
frankly,
be.
for people who aren't on a committee, that may be the question is, I'm not on a committee right now, but is there a task for, maybe I'm not going to even be on this in this elected structure, but maybe I would want to connect around something that's on here.
Also, Joanne, can I just say they won't be going in blind. We have talked about it, but the next group there will be descriptions for each of these teams. There will be bylaw descriptions. They just won't be limiting. Does that make sense?
Yes, so you were saying is there'll be, and this makes all the sense in the world, that as you define this more in more detail, it may become apparent that something might need to be moved around, or even something added that's not there, or maybe
Absolutely.
something that could be combined in another way. So this is, I realize, a working document, and it's very, very positive. I'm very enthusiastic about this. So I'm glad to hear, though, that there'll be the next step will have some detail.
I do also think that music has kind of taken a little bit of a pilot piece of this. I don't know if you guys have been following it, but they have gone to an as-needed committee base. It's a team approach. If they've got a concert coming up, they put together a team for that concert, and the team takes over the planning. And when they're done, they're done. It has worked. On music committee, Elizabeth and the team have been really happy with the way it's working. So I think, and they go outside. I mean, if they're brainstorming and they need people from outside the committee, they certainly are. They'll go before the church or walk up and ask you, "Can you help out?" So I think it's doable, and I think it's exciting. But a lot of it is going to be how we bring it to the church and how we make sure that they all understand that it's not a monthly commitment for 3 years anymore. It's a commitment to the church, not to a timeline or a bylaw other than the general guidelines. It is a commitment to to our mission and our ministry, and hopefully they'll find their gift and bring it to it with us.
In my mind, the additional beauty of this particular structure is that it is going to organically create small groups, cell groups for the church. And in these small groups, that's where churches become stronger from within, as well as attracting from without.
Yes.
So automatically, suddenly there's going to be a few people that develop deeper relationships because they had a chance to do something for a while together. So
I think, Joanne, one of the things I know you have been working on, you and Elizabeth and Sue have all been very active with helping local immigrants. And that's not that's an example of creativity, of people coming together. This is a task you see needs to be done. And you've come together and through the blessings of the church, that's something that you're accomplishing. It's not written into any bylaws of the church, but that's a function that you are now performing.
Yeah, and it's a great example because it is loosely under outreach. That outreach stays aware of what they're up to. Outreach, for instance, suggested when we were going to raise some money that we get an additional group of people to be stewards over that money. So there was some accountability. So there is this communication back and forth that's happening. But you're absolutely right, Jane. It's not written into our bylaws. It's not part of our usual order of business for outreach. So it's a great example of the kind of organic energy that can be created when people who are passionate about something have a task to do rather than a meeting to go to.
Right.
Yeah,
I
Right.
think
so
it also opens up for people who, I remember a lot of years ago, when I was on the nominating committee, I asked someone if they would like to be on the outreach committee. And she said to me, "Oh, I am so glad that someone finally is asking me to serve on that committee. I've wanted to do it for years." Now, how sad is that, that someone wanted to participate, but they felt like they couldn't jump in and make a suggestion or want to participate in an established committee because they had not been asked and elected to be on that committee. So again, not only the people that sit in the pews on Sundays, but the people that read the notes of the River Green, that just want to show up to work on the chili lunch or whatever. Everybody can find a place somewhere in this.
Keith, could you repeat your question? Because I've forgotten it.
So what what group have you served in? What committee have you served on? And let's see if we can find it. Now, we talked about the immigrant help group. They would fall here under mission and outreach team. So, it's pretty easy to see the, music director section area there under the ministerial group. So you can see what
Well,
we've got. Yeah,
I can offer an example if you like.
please.
Okay. Um, as a member of the Deacons Committee, one of the things that I've really enjoyed is delivering the tulips and then the Easter lilies or whatever we deliver, I forget now, to people. And some of those turn into visitation, and some don't. Some people thank me very much or say, leave it on the stoop, I'll pick it up later. But more times than not, it turns into a very lovely visit experience. And so I've had that as part of the responsibility. And the deacons have actually talked about kind of expanding that and trying to have what we're calling touch points. That's Susie's term, where you might send a person a card or call them or something like that. But somehow you're making meaningful contact X number 3 or 4 times a year, whatever that might be.
So
And
that,
so I'm seeing
Yeah.
that as now under Ministry and Faith Foundation.
And I think that's a perfect example, Peter, because that could be a great collaboration between those two teams. So let's make this happen. Let's say you are the liaison for Central Board from Deacons, and you go when you have that.
It's
From
purely
the worship team,
hypothetical,
you mean?
right? I'm
Yes,
not.
yes, it's
Yeah, okay,
hypothetical.
good.
Yeah. So when you go to that central board meeting, you would share that and say, in the past, now this is falling under mission and ministry. Do we want to do this as a collaboration and go before the church and say we'd like to put together a task force and decide whether it's going to be for a specific time or whether that becomes one of your faith, I'm losing my term. One of the things that one team does always. You know what I mean? Do you want to expand it? I think that's the perfect thing for brainstorming. And maybe it starts at central board and the two team reps there go back to their teams and say, hey, guess what? We're going to have a meeting together and we're going to brainstorm this and we're going to, you know what I mean? So I think that's the hope, is that something that used to be on another group or maybe not out there at all goes to central board, because central board under this becomes more of a policy leadership type. I mean, they'll still have the final word on most things, but that central board is going to have reps there from each group. So we're hoping that when it goes up there, there may be some brainstorming at that level too. You go back and say, it's gonna stay under mission and ministry, but they're gonna form a task force and it's gonna be a collab between the two of us. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I'll just make this comment, and then you guys can move on because I know you want to reserve questions and a lot of discussion for further in the presentation, I think. My concern is that a simple thing like delivering flowers and visiting and you know something that's sort of grown organically over the years with the Deacons Committee is now something where we're, oh well, we've got to touch base with ministry and faith before we do this, or we sort of have to collaborate, as where it could be an opportunity, it might feel like an obligation, and then you might get into it feels like, okay, well then we need to connect with so and so so that we iron out this and that and the other thing. It becomes it could be seen as a barrier as opposed to something positive and collaborative.
That's a real helpful caution. Thank you.
Yes.
I've
And I
taken
also,
that feedback and we'll contemplate how to be more clear about what the difference is. I mean, I think the structure is trying to be permission giving, not sort of here's all the hoops you have to jump through, but it's
Yeah.
also trying to bring together people who have work that might be coincident or collaborative, and so they can choose to be collaborative, not be forced to be.
Yeah, I did. My concern is it could
Yeah.
sort of add meetings rather than subtract.
Completely get where you're going. So thank you for that caution.
Thank you.
and I do want to say, because we're getting through this, I think pretty well, but as you look at our notes, and they were just notes, and I know they're not clear, but one of the things we talked about is that each team, after they get their team, each team will operate under what we call faith in action working documents. And in the document will include items such as their vision, their expectations, their priorities for tasks. So you may decide that's a task that's a priority for you and it's going to stay in your team. Meeting schedule, policies for CB presentations. So that's a working document that as your team, you may not, I think when they get to the point where they start developing those faith in action documents, that's when those kind of decisions are going to have to get clarified a little bit. Does that make sense? We're still, like I said, Peter, it's so early, I think.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. I get it.
Yeah. So.
The only thing, Peter, I would add is your concerns are great. I'd rather say it's a discernment in progress, because we really need to, look at our own biases, look at our own fears, and then seek that intervention. And I applaud you for pointing those possible things out.
I like discernment. That's good.
And it's nice to hear that you're thinking of, oh my gosh, too many people would want to do this task rather than nobody wants to do this task. I like that.
I do too.
Are we
Hey,
ready for more questions and
Yep.
comments and feedback? Yeah.
Stewardship.
Yeah.
Stewardship. Where would it be?
So you can see it under minister, which is kind of where it is now. Although I actually have one adjustment I'd like to make to this, and that is I would like the stewardship team to be approved by central board, even if it's working with the minister, which is kind of what's happened now.
It currently is.
Where? Oh, I see. It's in the minister, the blue circle there. Got it.
I think I misunderstood that bubble.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be the minister doing stewardship. It's that stewardship team is working with the minister.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Suzanne, Austin.
I'm very excited about this proposal and appreciate what I imagine is considerable work that's already been invested. I think this has wonderful potential. one of the things that occurs to me is the profound importance of really being conscious of how to create a different culture in our church, in our congregation, in order for the collaboration and communication to really take hold. I think I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting point, Suzanne. I do think that there is a little cultural shift we're going to have to work on. And one of that is that we can't just have this design and then have nominating, like fill these 20 positions. We actually need to do some work every year on that language that Patty and Jane have been using. You have gifts to bring to the church. Um, uh, where are you going to plug in this year? Because it really depends on everyone saying yes to something.
Absolutely.
I before we go to questions, I just also want to say real quick, I do think a lot of our feedback also was with communication. And I think we've really, especially since Susie's focused on it, transparency has gotten much better. And I know that we've had some in the past people feeling like they weren't getting enough financial transparency, communication, transparency of what was going on in different areas. So that came back to us many times. So I think that is going to be key. And that I think that communication, that's why we need to make sure that people understand that we need them, that we need them, that they're part of this community and they need to be an active member of this community. So even if it's in a small way, we need to do it.
Okay.
Joanne, yeah, go ahead.
In terms of a cultural shift, this new structure, what it really does do is it gives people an opportunity to engage with what they really love to do. I think even as we talk about people have gifts and these gifts are needed to make our community work, I would like us to talk equally about this is what our community offers you in terms of engagement of your spirit, of your talents, of your interests. And if this is something here that excites you, we want you to have an opportunity to be part of that. And because that gift goes both ways. The community gives back to the person who's engaged, especially when the structure is as flexible as this looks to be.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Ann.
Thanks. First of all, this is great. I really appreciate the work that everyone's done on this. It's kind of exciting to feel like it's more agile and the opportunity for shorter tasks and more ad hoc type work. I just thank you so much for all you guys have done on this. Question I have is kind of a process question. So this is just probably a huge change for our church. Have you guys thought about change management at all? You're laughing, Susie. I don't know.
I think we need to think more about it. That's for sure.
That was discussed a little with Central Board, and that was their response too. I think we wanted to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Susie, but I think our goal, our mandate from them was, we need you to find a structure that you think will generally fit this church, try to put something together and bring it back to us. So once we have a structure that we can work from, we can figure out how we're going to transition from this one to that one.
Got it.
Yeah,
And that's what I meant by other committees.
A piece of this, definitely the transition team is part of what's going to be addressing, sort of the change management piece. But I like your invitation because I think what you're suggesting is it's not just the transition from old to new technically, it's also addressing some of the embedded reactions that we all have to change and how to kind of make space for that in a gracious way.
Exactly. And I think we all know that change is not always something that comes easily for people. So how do we get the rationale, and how do we, kind of build that transition, but how do we frame it up so that, people embrace it? Because it's a lot of good work, and I think it's critical that that be considered as probably a next step after this is finalized.
Thank you.
Questions?
You got a hand up.
I saw Joanne had a comment too, I think, didn't you?
Sue
I
Walter.
Sue Walters.
You're good. Susan Walters.
yeah, I'm just I can't see. I can see four people at any time. Can we turn off the screen sharing so we could see everybody at the same? Is it
Yeah, part of
maybe
that is also your settings, but which
is it?
I can't change
I-
that, but I'm happy to stop the share and that helps.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
you go.
Just wanted to know who else was in the room.
Yeah, usually if you click on your participants tab at the
Okay, there's a
bottom,
way to do it through that.
yeah,
Okay.
it'll pull up at least a list. It may not show you everybody at once, but it will at least show you who's in the
Well, it gave me a list, but
yeah,
I thought it might be helpful to have a conversation
yeah,
where people could see each other at this
yeah,
point if people have questions.
yeah. Any
And
other, did you have anything other than that you wanted to add
yeah,
in there?
one thought. I think we have an outreach committee that is probably larger than it needs what for most of what we do. But one of the big things we do is we do make decisions about funding. And what I would want us to be thinking about is how we put together a balanced package of funding. And it's not just the work of two or three people at the end to make that decision. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I-
Well, and that's exactly an example of where you would call together a task force. But rather
yeah.
than saying you need to show up for 12 meetings a year in order to do this, you could potentially say, we're going to do 2 meetings a year that are just about disbursement. Who wants
Okay.
to show up for that?
Okay. And then have groups that do research about the care.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And maybe something about setting directions with a wider group about what our priorities are each year.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Just want to put that in the mix and know that it's something we need to think about.
Yeah. That's a great example of how this would work, by the way, because
Yeah.
I think that is an exciting thing, and some people would love to be involved in making those funding decisions, but probably say, I don't, I just don't want to have to show up. And you think also about this provides the opportunity for some of our summer folks who aren't around
Right.
year round to participate in a way that they just can't.
Yeah.
That'd be
Right.
lovely.
Yeah. No.
Jeff, you have a hand up.
Wondering, well, actually, before I wonder out loud, thank you, guys, for all your work on this. I'm curious, in your research of other churches that have perhaps gone down this path, were you able to see any sort of before and after stories, particularly in terms of getting new voices, more participation, more energy into the work of the church after they went through a reorganization like this?
Well,
I'll
Jeff,
chime in
online,
first.
online, Jeff, when
Yeah.
I did it, I did a lot of research online. I will say that South Portland has very successfully, South Portland, their congregational church has very successfully now, I believe, finished their transition when I talked to people there and are functioning under, it's a little bit larger than ours, but it's a larger church. But they are on a team now based system. I don't know what the word is. And but the other one, when you see it online, it's always a success. They only tell you that it works. They're not going to tell me if it failed. And I never found, to be fair, I never found one that failed. I found some. There were 2 or 3 that actually ended up combining their teams into large, because they found that their teams collaborated so much, it was easier just to make it a larger team and with more task forces.
Gotcha. Yep.
You know what I mean? So
That makes perfect sense. Yep.
yeah. So
Yeah,
Thank you.
what I would also add is my experience around churches that do this kind of large change is that you do it, and then about a year or two later, you say, this part of it isn't working, and that part is. And so there's usually a couple of adjustments before you get it settled.
And working on a task force at the church I was in, it took, I'm going to say, 2 years.
Yeah.
And to have really to have fabulous results. I mean, it was a slow shift. And in fact, not to pick on somebody at that church, but we sent somebody for further in the ministerial staff for further schooling to make it better, because we all thought this person had what it took, but needed a little more refinement. So he said, okay, we're going to put you on a sabbatical and we're going to send you to school for 3 months or something like that. And believe it or not, it really made a difference.
Okay, Cindy, you have your hand up.
I only have a couple of things. Like everybody else, I really compliment everybody on all this hard work. I do think it's really, really exciting. I'm trying to look at this from the point of view of people that haven't been to any of these meetings or heard any of this, which is probably going to be about 80% of the congregation. And so I was looking at the way the information is presented. And I think the idea of this all being based on ministry and mission is really important, because you're right, our old bylaws and the old way that we're set up was a task-based organization where everybody had a task to do with a group of other people. And I'm wondering if you can not only define those, but then use that as the graphic when you're talking about the boxes and how they're organized. What parts, which boxes are ministry, which boxes are mission? And then when I looked at some of those boxes, there's an executive or administrative series of boxes. So there's the care of the property, the mission of the church, the ministry of its congregation, and maybe define those terms a little bit so that people understand them in lay terms, because they're great terms, and either come up with a lay version of them or just use those as the foundation and then organize the slides around those. And that way, I think it makes it easier for people to start with those, not really silos, but at least that's the way they can think about them in their minds as they try to get their head around this all. It is easy to try to map our old system to the new system, but I think if you're really going to try to make that transition, starting with those foundational pieces will help to just let people free think a little bit rather than trying to map the old to the new in that kind of way. The other thing I would do is put task forces on those boxes underneath all of those committees so that it's clear that there's a task force for everything, or there's an opportunity. Or start with, I love the phrase that somebody said, and I think it was Jane, everybody find your place, and start with all the people at the top and then funnel them down into these boxes that you have, so that it does put some responsibility on each individual person to play a role and find something that they love to do and contribute to it. So some of this is just graphics and how we communicate all of this, but in my head, I liked the ministry mission piece, and then I couldn't put all those boxes into those categories as I was looking at all of that. And I
love that comment. And I would just add, notice that the word administer has the word minister in it, because it's about ministry. It's about ministering with. So thank you. That's a really helpful comment.
What I loved the best is on the first slide instead of treasurer, it says treasure of the church, and that's Wayne's job right now. So thank you very much for saying he's the treasurer of the church on the first slide of how we're
That's
organized right
very
now.
sweet. And he is indeed a treasure of the
Yeah.
church.
Yes, he is.
He is.
Yes, he is.
Also, I think it's really
Yeah.
important as you're thinking about how to communicate all of this as you go forward to think about the people to the organization rather than the organization to the people. And
Mm,
again, just the way of looking at the graphics and the slides and thinking about every single person, because the congregation is made up of every individual. So thinking about how those individuals feed into the organization itself. We have always organized ourselves and talked about ourselves as a church that has committees, and then the people are at the bottom of the pile. And
mm,
so maybe thinking about that in the other way would really be helpful.
mm.
And ministries used a lot in all of the slides you have, but I think there's different ways that we use it in each of the slides. So think about that word. It's just confusing for me, and I know that it will be confusing for a lot of people that don't understand what that might be. So it's really just helping to make this even better and grow even stronger and find ways to help it communicate in ways that are really impactful and really helpful, because I do think you've done a really great job, and this shows lots of opportunity for everything. Says someone who has not been on a committee for a while because family life has been too complicated. So,
Yeah.
but there will be a lot of people like me, so maybe there's a role, a tiny role everybody can play when family life is so complicated that makes a difference.
Right. And we hope that this kind of design would help you find the thing you can say yes to, given the limitations of your complicated family life.
Yeah.
And Cindy, that is why we didn't define them as task force, because I mean we put tasks instead of task force underneath them because we're hoping that some of those will be shifted, changed a little. That perhaps before the task was, Christian ed, but now maybe it's community and Christian, education. We don't want to box them. We want to give them room to be creative and grow.
But what I hear,
the idea of mission and ministry is an excellent way. That's a great idea to break them up so people can focus on that instead of, like we were before, our goal-oriented type, where we at, where we want to be. That's a great idea.
Patty, what I hear her suggesting is not that we're hardwiring the task forces, but it may help people for us to put some sample task forces out there so we can see kind of how that might happen.
Or don't even label them and just say, what can you do under these boxes, whatever. What's your idea?
I love that. What can you
just
do?
So that
there
are no confinements to everything.
Gotcha.
And I think that would just really help. And I think, the most active people that we have in many ways are the people that take care of the property, take care of the money, take care of all the administrative stuff that we have to do in the church, the communications. So I would definitely make that another part of the silo, because I think there are a lot of people that are interested in taking care of old houses or taking care of old buildings or, worrying about the finances. And one of the things I was thinking, if you think about having a traffic director, if anybody has an idea of something that they want to do, if there's one person you could go to and say, I have this idea, where should I go? Because I do think it's going to be hard for people to sort of sort it out for themselves. But maybe if there's one person that could help to direct people in the different slots, that would really help a lot too.
Nice idea. Love
idea. And we're a long way from that, but that's a great idea.
No, let's not lose that way.
Go for it, Patty. You're all set.
My notes already. It's already in my notes, but boy, are we a long way from that.
Peter, you have your hand up.
Yes, I do. I'll lower it right now. This is following up, not on terms of content, but talking a little bit about the process here and getting information to people. Things. It's a lot of the examples used in this presentation today were things that are really short term. I want to have an ice cream social. I want to do this or I want to do that. So what for me is a more difficult thing to understand and kind of explain is what about those lowly deacon tasks like ushering and and things like that, things that have to happen, week in and week out, and those things that are just kind of the work of making things happen. And that's just the example that comes to mind for me. And how will this new structure do that? And I've heard, well, then you pull in people that occasionally want to do it and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you need to have some number of ushers, and that isn't, we continually sort of cajole, beg, bribe, maybe. I don't know what we do to try and get ushers, but and some of that works, but it's sort of isolated cases where it seems to work, where somebody gets that message and they raise their hand and say, "Oh, I'll help out." Um, so the presentation is sort of heavy on exciting short-term projects and not so much on like the nuts and bolts week in and week out kind of tasks.
Yeah,
So
what I would say to that, Peter, is that, ushering is a week-to-week task, but it's not a week-to-week task that one person needs to do. So it kind of falls under both, part one. Part two of my answer is that there are some problems that are, no matter what the structure is, no structure will solve. And what it might be that the structure enables us to do is have a conversation about those being problems and making some decisions about how to address them in new and creative ways, or shifting altogether. To my
yeah.
mind, one of the examples of this is fellowship hour, coffee hour, which we all love. Um, but we love to attend, but every single time a committee has to do it, I hear a big groan. Like, oh gosh, just another task we need to take on. And one of my questions, is it time for us as a church to have some conversation about, do we need fellowship hour every Sunday? Who is showing up? Who's showing up regularly versus who shows up occasionally? What are we trying to accomplish during fellowship hour that we might accomplish a different way? Those kinds of questions need to be dug through. So, yeah. So I don't expect this structure to solve every problem of the church.
Yeah.
It's not going to.
Yeah. Thanks.
Anybody else?
I have a comment as the current central board chairperson. During the transition period, the congregation is still going to be voting on the budget, which makes a lot of these administrative decisions that people were talking about fall into place. There will be a smaller core team that will be monitoring the budget than our current bigger teams, but there will be, in my opinion, more opportunity for people to be involved in specific budget items that they relate to. That's just my comment based on what I've seen and been hearing. This is my fourth or fifth meeting with this.
As is Peter's. Thank you, Central Board members that keep showing up. I do think that's true. I think it's going to money for Wayne. Money is not going to be a fun transition through this, but that will be part of the transition. But I think it is exciting that some people in the church find that exciting. Not me, but some find that stuff exciting, and they can just say, "Hey, Susie," or whoever's on the central board, that I would love to be involved in the audit process, or I'd love to. Great, here's a chance. So I think, I think the transition is going to answer a lot of these questions. I think the questions are going to help. Thank you guys, because we're all taking notes, and it'll give us a little. Now the next time Peter comes to a meeting, we'll have a whole new thing for you. It sounds like, but the next one we're going to do live, are we not, Susie?
Yeah, the last one is an after church again.
Is somebody
let me say
keeping an
something.
FAQ?
I'm sorry?
Is somebody keeping track of these
Oh,
questions to create an FAQ?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, lots of notes are being taken. I'm taking lots of notes. And we're recording this so we can go back through and make sure we're addressing some of this. I want to say something different about the money part of this, though. I think in a real way, that this actually forces the church to connect mission and money a lot more intentionally. One of my concerns about this church is very often building drives the way we spend our money without having thought through how building should be parsed relative to other essential bits of our work. Which is not to say we shouldn't take care of our building. I'm big on taking care of the building. It's just the conversation happens over there, and it's people in Christian education who might say, well, gosh, we'd love $20,000 too to do something new. Never have that opportunity because they have no idea how much money building is spending over there without us, the rest of us, ever knowing about it. So I think this actually will force us to be more intentional about how money is being spent to support the mission and ministry of the church.
Ironically, I don't disagree with you very often, but I think that we have been very transparent about money that we spend and where we spend it.
I'm not saying we're not transparent. I'm just saying it's a separate conversation.
Yeah. Yes, I agree.
I appreciate everybody taking the time to attend this meeting and any other meetings you've had dealing with this. I mean, it's something near and dear to my heart. I believe we have to make changes in the future. We cannot continue to operate the way we have been.
The reality is we're not making quorum on so many things. Do you guys, Peter, do you at Deacons make a quorum always?
Jeff, I think we've never been without a quorum. I don't think we have some very faithful attendees.
Awesome.
But we're at about, I don't know, a little over half steam in terms of the 12 that we're supposed to have.
Yeah. So what I want to be able to let people go when because this has been a long meeting, but I also want to say, please hear, this design is not fully baked. And so if you have a thought tonight in the middle of the night, oh, I hope not, or tomorrow or 3 weeks from now, please capture it and contact Patty or Jane or Keith and give them that feedback, because we want to make this the best design we can.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Let the church say amen.
Amen.
Amen.